Hello, everybody. Welcome to John and James Live. And today we have special guest, James Collier, the co-founder of Huel. Welcome, James. How are you today, sir?
Yeah, great to be here, John.
Good man, good man. I was so looking forward to you coming on today. I couldn't wait, really, because I've got my black edition here.
Oh, great!
Look,
The
look
latest
at that.
product.
I'm ready, and I'm
Ready?
hungry as well.
Let's get that out straight away. Let's get that one sorted.
Good.
There you go.
So James, tell me, do you have to pinch yourself a little bit to think about, say, go back 15 years and to where you are now? Do you think in terms of growing Huel, getting involved with this, do you have to think to yourself, wow, you've come so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? It's I work with really good people. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with Julian Hearn, the principal founder of Huel, and his idea. And he's very much the entrepreneur here, and the one that's sort of with the vision, if you like. My background is nutrition, and for sure I've got skills there, and I've sort of brought that in. So it's been great to do it, and I found the way I view life is probably, that's the right word, has changed significantly because of Huel. Now, that's because I work on this rocket ship, we call it, and it's allowed me to look at other things to do with the food system, but more broadly. And when I say the food system, I don't just mean nutrition and farming. There's so much more which we can delve into in due course. But yeah, interesting question, John. I guess I've kind of, it's been gradual, and I've known that Huel is going to be a successful company for quite some time now. But yeah, it's good. It's fun.
And when we take ourselves back to like where you grew up, I know I've read about your childhood and some of those challenges that you had when you was growing up. Would you like to talk about where you grew up and how that evolved?
Yeah, sure. So everybody's had their challenges, I'm sure, and challenges are often subjective and relative. I had mine for sure. So I often attribute the reason that I went and did nutrition down to two reasons. The first one is when I was 8 years old, my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, when my parents told me this, it was the first time I'd heard the C word. I didn't know at the time. It wasn't given that long to live, but I was told she had to have this operation, a lumpectomy, although obviously not those terms in those days. And that was sort of getting my head around it, but you just thought, like any kid does, everything's going to be all right. Mum then changed the way she ate and the way she behaved, very much more of a sort of a meditative perspective on life, but also adopted a vegetarian diet and took a load of supplements and stuff. Some of the stuff I find very questionable now and the sort of things I fight against, but nevertheless, good food. Dad and me, we didn't have the vegetarian diet, but we did eat very much a plant-rich diet. That wasn't a conscious choice, I'm sure, but it was. This is the 80s. But Mum nevertheless survived 11 more years. Now, that's obviously massively down to the NHS. And bear in mind, it's the 80s and healthcare wasn't as good as we're fortunate to have now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also, I'm confident the way she changed to live her life was the other key reason.
How did that impact you, James, and your family, like your father? And because when I've worked in cancer rehab before as well, so I know it's that. Was it sort of like a constant fear, or did you just get used to it? How would you say that was during those times, or you didn't really know any different?
I guess I didn't know any different. I mean, there was a lot of trips to the hospital for Mum. Some I went with, some I didn't. She joined the Bristol Cancer Help Centre, which is very much alternative and very questionable now. But let's not just I don't want to fully demonise that sort of thing, because it was a very promoted mindful perspective and positive thinking and got people to eat good food. That's great. So yeah, it was just part of what I had growing up, really. And obviously part of what I did, we can talk about that in a moment, is when I did graduate as a dietitian and worked in the NHS, I too worked in cancer rehab for some part from the dietary perspective. So yeah, the other side of growing up that I put down to why I went and did nutrition was I was bullied a lot at school. I'm sure a lot of lads are, but it affected me quite a lot mentally. I can remember it. And I thought, I don't like this very much. And then one of my best friends growing up, who's still a very close friend today, a couple of years older than me, started lifting heavy things. I thought, I want to do that. And nicked his weights when he went to a gym. And then a year or so later, I went to a gym and haven't stopped since. And then when it was, did my A-levels, did quite well. It was time to go to uni. Do I do economics or do I do nutrition? Do I do the rational thing or do I do the passion thing? I went with passion. Turned out maybe that the passion was the rational thing 30 odd years later. So yeah, I'm glad I did that. I had a year out beforehand, so I had a bit of experience working in warehouses and factories and stuff, which was good. It was eye-opening and useful. So that John is kind of probably some of the challenges I had growing up. Maybe there's probably a lot more as well, but they're relevant to my career progress.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it, when you look at the bodybuilding scene, you'd probably be able to argue quite rationally that a lot of the guys that are doing that have come out of some level of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And this is their way of coping I certainly for myself, I mean, both John and I are personal trainers. And, we definitely see that as a way in which you can, it's building self-esteem. You're doing something physical, but it's also building yourself to a point where actually, I want people to think twice about wanting to approach me or to that childhood bullying situation of not being vulnerable in that respect as well. You're building this kind of, this calcified shell to actually say you can't penetrate, you can't come at me with that anymore. So I guess guys that you trained with, would you say they were sort of along a similar lines if they were being entirely honest?
Yeah, a lot really. I mean, I did, looking back, I had the body dysmorphia, muscle dysmorphia. And even these days, I still get rings of that. I'm not as big as I used to be. I'm still in pretty reasonable shape. I get down when I feel I'm holding a bit more fat, and I get down when the weight in the scales goes down. There's a constant conflict. Okay, it doesn't really upset me like it used to. I mean, I could go somebody said, "Oh, you lost a bit of weight," to me when I was late teen, early 20s. That would send me into depression for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Not right.
I hear you.
I don't do that anymore. The more I go, no, I'm not now, which is great. I just go, you're wrong, because I know it. But if I have, then I go, yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Weird why people seem to have this fascination with how other people look, though, isn't it, in this world?
Exactly.
Yeah, it really took off, didn't it, with the sort of the Arnold Schwarzenegger films, isn't it? And then you got the Sylvester Stallone stuff, and then really that image of the body sort of evolved, didn't it, from the 60s and 70s. If you watch guys then, they look slightly different, didn't they? Maybe long hair, hairy chest, not really that built. And then the whole bodybuilding era sort of took off, and now it's a bit of a phenomenon, isn't it? This whole era of, like, with the Gymshark culture. Yeah,
it's gone in a different direction, even from my era, which was, obviously quite a long time after the Arnold era. It was there was still got a hardcore image to it, though. Now, there are those hardcore elements do exist, but there's a lot more. It's a lot more mainstream these days. You've got camera holding people in the gyms these days, and sure, some of them set up a tripod and want to watch their squat form. Brilliant. We didn't have that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But how many of them are really doing that, or are they going to upload it onto social media?
Yeah, no,
it's an entire industry now, isn't it? It's an entire industry.
So when you left the university, did you go straight? Because I heard that you worked as like a bouncer and things like that on the door. Was that the case as well, or was that getting through uni?
I went and worked in the NHS as a clinical dietitian, and that was, in total, that was 7 years. Look, the NHS doesn't pay great now. It paid even worse back then. And I was in the gym. I put a bit of size on. The people down the gym were working on the doors. Hey, why don't I come and do it? I'll be working with people I know anyway from the gym scene. sounds fun. Get a bit more money. That paid rubbish as well, but 2 rubbish payments makes an okay payment, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I'm not someone who's got a fighting background, but I was quite big. We had a bit of training on how to manage those sort of incidents, and including throwing people out. But it's not good for your mental health at all. I was, for example, if I was doing maybe 3 nights on the doors, and it was pubs, and it was pub hours, pub shut at 11:30 back then. So, but I'd still say Thursday night be working, wouldn't get home till say 12. You don't really sleep till 12:30.
Yeah.
You get up at 7:30 in order to get ready to go to work, and I'd be on the ward at 9 o'clock with a little old lady. So throwing someone out at 11:30. Helping a little old lady friendly on a Friday morning, not good.
Unsustainable, yeah.
Yeah.
How old was you when you was doing that, James? What sort of age was you? Sort of late 20s, 30s?
No, that was. It started probably. That was probably in mid-20s. But it carried on for a few years. And I sort of stopped, but then I didn't stop. When the licensing came in, I couldn't be bothered to do it because I didn't really want to do it anymore. But I did kind of work. Some of the agency would say, "Hey, we're desperate. Can you come in? Just go in sort of plain clothes inside, not on the door." And it's, I was paid, but I wasn't licensed then, because it all changed. I don't know if you remember those eras, but for the right reasons, licensing. I wasn't ever licensed because I couldn't. It wasn't worth paying to do a course when you're going to do the odd shift here and there. And that was fine because I was working on my terms and I was getting paid better, and I was inside and the music was playing and you could have a bit of a dance, and I wasn't working, but I was working. So that was actually quite fun at that point.
And then how did that, then did you go full time in the NHS after that? Did you
No,
leave?
I was full-time in the NHS always. Yeah. This was a supplementary one. So I was working quite long hours. If I was working an extra 12 hours on a 37.5-hour week.
So James, you will have seen every kind of aspect with the NHS, and you must have had moments of quite acute frustration in terms of what patients are being fed, and you will have known from your from your qualifications in terms of nutrition that it wasn't optimal for them. But obviously there's budget restraints and I guess the logistics of it are an issue, but it must have been incredibly frustrating for you working in the NHS and being part of that sort of system and not seeing necessarily the best outcomes for patients. Would you agree with that?
I was working with the critically ill quite a lot of the time, people that needed to eat, so the outpatients were some weight loss and food intolerances, but inpatients were very much like, we need to get these people eating more, and the food probably isn't the tastiest, and it's the time you probably need tasty food. I'm not interested in the nutritional value so much. You just want calories and protein in people that are critically ill, because they're not having anything. And so it was frustrating. And you had the SIP fees, like the 40 SIPs or the Ensure Plus that you'd get through the pharmacy as prescribed, and they're okay tasting, I guess. I found them okay, but then I consume anything, and bodybuilding mindset, let's down what we can. But people who've got taste changes, are undergoing chemotherapy or radiotherapy, or have had their jaw damaged or whatever, they're not feeling great anyway about life. Let's be honest. You need energy, great, but they need to enjoy food. So that could be quite challenging,
And how was the food system changed then for you, James, going back sort of post World War II? What would you say the major?
Sorry.
Way to make friends and influence people, John.
Just food history here, because they say things. It's changed quite a bit, hasn't it? Obviously, there's a lot more of it, but then there's supermarkets are quite a new thing.
Things have changed, and people don't need to acknowledge that. I find it quite frustrating sometimes when social media influencers are going out there telling people to eat this and not eat that, when they don't realize quite what a privilege it is to have food. Plenty of food by now. A lot on the flip side, a lot of the academics and nutritionists that I respect that give really good content are saying the food system is broken. Now, I profoundly dispute that. In fact, that's how I opened my book, Well Fed, It starts with the phrase, the food system is broken. And then I go on to say why I disagree with that. Now, I've been challenged that I'm playing with words a bit, because the food system is far from perfect. But the point I'm trying to make is, if we had a time machine and we could use it to bring people forward, if we took someone from 12,000 years ago, a hunter-gatherer, or a guy from, say, 800 years ago, middle-aged farmer, and brought them into now, they would not be saying the food system's broken. They would be dancing around looking how much food we've got and how easy it is to come by, breaking their back or whatever working, and risk of accidents, etc., or being prey themselves. So I think it's always important to get things right and to frame things in the right way in order then to move forward. So if there was some sort of divine power that had a plan 12,000 years ago to make the perfect food system, what we've got would not be that plan, that's for sure. But it's not broken because it's never been built.
Sure.
Something that needs to be built for it to be broken. Now, there's a little story I write in there called The Dining Table, which people could read just to try and give them some perspective. Imagine we had a carpenter 12,000 years ago, started building the dining table, and they looked lots of wood, but then they got to a point maybe a couple of hundred years ago where they started using different technologies to make that table, and they started using different materials, no longer wood, but started using plastics and other synthetic materials. And also the dining table became higher, so not everyone could reach it, but it became bigger, and it had more food on it because there's too much food for everyone. That's the perspective I'm trying to make. Is a dining table is still being built. It's not what it was originally. The original IKEA plans have not been followed. Probably a bad analogy, but so in order to improve the food system, we've got a lot to do. We're facing massively increased risk of NCD, non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular diseases, strokes, Alzheimer's, inflammatory diseases. We've got a mental health crisis that is in part down to what we eat. Multiple factors play into why we've got mental health issues, but poor food choice is definitely one of them. We can talk about that more in a moment. Then we've got sustainability problems. We've got a food system that massively impacts climate change, land use, water use, and we've got so much food, we're throwing a bunch of it away, which is just there's no need for any human being at the moment to be without food. Yet for the last year, for the fourth time in 20 years, a famine was declared in the world. And that's down to political reasons. It was in South Sudan. That's political reasons and war. Okay. Then we've got ethical challenges as well. And when I mean ethics, we've got human rights. Humans are being exploited within the food system.
Of course,
and we've also got animals being exploited. So while what you guys think is ethical, I might have a different opinion on. But broadly speaking, I'm uncomfortable, and I think most people would be, with the inhumane way some animals are treated in certain farming methods. I'm not a vegan, and I probably never will be. But I'm very uncomfortable with some of the farming methods. And also, we've got people aren't enjoying food together enough. The concept of meals with other people is being reviewed. So we've got a food system that is not what it should be by a long shot. And we need to tackle those problems together. Now, that's what I tried to do in Well-Fed. I changed what I ate back in 2019. That led to me writing some articles during the pandemic when we got bored. Then I thought there's a book here. So I came up with a strategy called Contemplative Nutrition. The name has stuck and is used within the book. And it's about how we as individuals can make food choices that address each of those points simultaneously. Because sometimes there's a conflict, but a lot of it's just choosing food wisely. But it doesn't just mean going back to how our grandparents ate or whatever, because that's just not possible anymore, which is another thing I find so frustrating on social media influencers. We go, just eat real food. Define, please.
Yeah.
Well,
what does that mean?
Make an attempt at that. It's not possible. It's a privileged position. And we don't have to go as far as Sudan, for instance, to look at our privilege, we have to probably just go down the street a bit. We're just coming out of a cost of living crisis. I don't know, maybe we're still in it. That's not my area. But there are people that find it challenging to make good food choices. We need to acknowledge that before we go demonizing anything. We need certain food technologies in order to feed everybody healthily with minimal impact on animals and the environment. So I'm very much, people might call me a futurist when it comes to food. And I'm not saying we should, I'm not saying we need to go back to some farming technologies. So the intensive arable farming, for instance, is very questionable. But we shouldn't be doing away with it altogether. Let's look at new technologies that can be used in sort of old wisdom, for example. How can we tie it in?
That sort of regenerative agriculture, isn't it? I think is definitely the kind of way forward. But just to kind of make a point, James, I think there's such emotion around food, isn't it? And that can be some of the problem, is why we attach so much of our identity to what we were told as children growing up in respect of when we eat, how much we eat, the types of food we eat. And then we attach that to, the kind of the truth that we were told, or if our parents were lying to us, and we'll push back and we'll vehemently defend that in terms of people coming to us and saying, well, you shouldn't be eating this, or you shouldn't be eating that level of quantity. You shouldn't be having 3 square meals a day with snacks in between. And that's what we were told growing up. So you can understand why people have this kind of this response and this emotional response to any new information that comes out, or that somebody will say, actually, you are eating too much, you're eating the wrong things. But it's so attached to our identities, isn't it? I guess you've come across that quite a bit in terms of the vitriol that maybe you've got on social media, or those kind of people that will rally behind their belief systems, and they will defend it to the hilt.
Absolutely. I'm now, my next rabbit hole that I'm going down is just that, James. It's exactly that. So in chapter 3 of the book, I introduce a made-up word called dietology, which is a portmanteau of diet and ideology. And I'm giving it, what people are ideological about the diet. So by the term dietology is a dogmatic commitment to a nutrition-related belief that's not based on evidence, or worse, if someone was to present evidence to the contrary, they might even double down on that belief. Doesn't that sound very much like politics or religious ideology?
Yeah,
it very much does. There's something here, and that's the next rabbit warren I'm already going down. Let me give you an example of where I partly think this comes from. We've used the word culture and our identity. Okay, have you ever looked at the etymology of the word culture? Because it's really interesting if you do. The actual word culture that we now use for our behavior, how we dress, how we dance, how we talk to each other, the environment that we're in, it actually comes from the tilling of the land for food, the act of acquiring food from the land. The word culture is absolutely linked to food. Think of the word cultivate. Agriculture. It comes from field, so that's food from a field. And aquaculture, food from marine. So you can kind of understand why we're so invested in what we have, in what we eat. And another thing is, let's say someone's been feeling really crap. They've been having, their life's not good, they're overweight, they're feeling tired all the time. They hear some social media influencer come out with, or even before social media, they're reading some magazine, some diet plan, and they follow it, and they feel great. And this sustains as well for a little while at least. They want to tell everyone about it. I get that, right? I've done this, I've changed, and I feel this. Now, it's very likely, not down to the specific diet they followed, it's very likely that any lifestyle change they'd have made from crap would have made them feel tons better. Maybe they're exercising more as well, which, exercise is a better predictor of living well older than any food choices we can do, physical activity. So I find that challenging as well, because humans, we are hugely complex, and people like black and white thinking. So this is part of the reason I wrote the book, was like, I want to get people away from black and white thinking. I want people to embrace complexity. And I've been asked this one question on other podcasts recently. What's the one takeaway that you want people to take from your book? That's an easy answer. I just want people to address one thing, to embrace the fact that the food system is complex. and multiple things play into each other. If you embrace that, you've already opened your mind up to other perspectives, and you're not going to be pulled in by any dietological, to use my term, incentives. If that makes sense.
Yeah, in terms of what the masses would think about nutrition, is it more of the food pyramid? Is that the first thing that really came in, which was widespread in terms of how to eat? Is there anything you would evolve on that food pyramid, or do you think that's quite a good guideline?
It's not a bad guideline. Okay. Has it made some errors in the past? Absolutely. The eggs thing, for instance, we all know that eggs, are a nutritious food. While I might disagree with some of these knobhead influencers out there, if they're promoting eggs, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, we can go down the rabbit hole of where the eggs come from, what sort of farming methods. Yeah, we need to talk about that. But nutritionally, they're a good thing. Also, there's been in the past, you might have heard of trans fats. And if anyone hasn't heard of trans fats, these are hydrogenated oils that were processed. The original application was to make spreadable margarine. So you could put these in a fridge and you could spread it. And keep a long shelf life. And they were all thought to be healthy for us. And it turns out they really, really weren't. In fact, we know. In fact, this is one of the few things in nutrition that everyone agrees on. Trans fats are bad, really bad. Fortunately, now though, that's kind of a moot point because they're all artificial ones are are not in the food system anymore. It's very rare anyway if they are. So it's not really an issue. But that it does actually make me slightly more sympathetic to some of the cautious influencers who demonize foods and say, well, that they might be villainizing something, and we say, well, the evidence says it's not. Look at this evidence, and they might say, yeah, but look what happens to trans fats. Well, they got a point, haven't they? They do have a point. Yeah. It's been a mess up in food policy before, but it doesn't mean that it's a mess up now. It just means we're doing better. And is food policy perfect? No way. Is it doing an okay job? Probably not even that, let's be honest. But I don't think it's down to any particular food choice. The biggest problem we have when it comes to nutrition is the amount we're having. Okay, so can you blame food industry for that? Well, I don't like to blame the food industry. It's a broad concept that covers a lot. But certain capitalist incentives have urged people to make food very hyper palatable, and high sugar, high salt, the wrong types of fats, and maybe the texture as well. So that's the problem. So is sugar on its own inherently dangerous? Only because we love it, and
it's the volume thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are things like when it comes to mental cravings and stuff, there are indirect problems. But broadly speaking, a bit of sugary diet that's well within your calorie intake is not going to be dangerous. So I can't remember where I started. I've lost my train of thought. I've gone off down. I do this. I go off down a rabbit hole.
Don't worry.
I'll try and bring it back. I'll try and remember where I started.
Yeah, but in terms of what would you do in the future with that, James?
What would I do in the future?
Yeah, what would you do? Would you put a taxation on sugar? I know, like, we've got the Make America Healthy Again situation going on. So I don't know what are your thoughts on that one?
Everything that America Healthy Again are doing, I'd probably do the opposite.
Seriously, what was the main points on that?
Yeah, so I don't want to go down the political route. I don't think it's right. I avoid, it's a complex issue that I would, in order to do it justice, I'd have to talk at length. But having individuals that are in charge who have historically refuted science and gone against evidence-based medicine and practices, I find worrying. So what would I do? I don't know about the tax thing. I do think we need what I can answer to answer your question, John, is this. I don't like blame culture at all.
Of course,
when people are saying the food industry this or the government this, that's not good. I don't know about you guys. You're both PTs. You'll probably get this, right? When I was brought up, I was told to take ownership and some degree of personal responsibility. Hang on a minute. I'm probably going to contradict myself now, because I'm going to come back to this point in a moment, John. Hold that, but I do want to come back to it. But let's look at obesity. We now know that a lot of people who struggle with their weight, genuinely have a predisposition to wanting to eat food, a lot more food, and the wrong types of food. And we know this from a neuroscientific perspective. We know this from genes, and we know this behaviorally as well. Okay, does this mean that everybody can't control the weight? No, but it's a damn side harder for some people than others. Now, I realize what I said a moment ago about personal responsibility is kind of it's not really very helpful. But I don't know how to navigate. I don't know what the right term is, because I know I've contradicted myself then. So what the point is, when I say personal responsibility, we have to take ownership of our own, of ourselves. Okay. Now that's harder for some people than others. Really, another group I find on social media frustrating is those that sort of villainize people that struggle with their weight and say they're just lazy. I don't know about you, but some individual who's constantly struggled with food noise ringing in their ear, finds it really, really hard to exercise, goes to the gym and does well for a little bit, and then fails again, but keeps trying again and again and again. I don't call that lazy. I call that courageous. I call that
they work hard. We see a lot of clients that work hard.
It's very easy, isn't it, just to kind of label, and it's a throwaway comment and just say, because it's, if it makes you feel better about yourself, that you can kind of do that. But I think maybe what you were looking to term there, James, is agency over your own health outcomes. I think we've possibly abdicated responsibility for our own health and well-being to things like, big pharma, or to, for people just to spoon feed us.
And then we blame them.
And then turn around and say, well, that's not fucking working. So, who is to blame here?
But we've got to start with the kids there, James, because obviously if you're struggling with obesity or overweight as a kid, it's I don't know what the statistics are, but it's obviously going to be massively hard when you're an adult, isn't it? I don't know, in terms of the replication of fat cells and things like that. And, the kid you can't say to the kid, you got to have personal responsibility. They don't really know, do they, when they're jugging down sugar at school?
John, could I just draw sorry to interrupt, chaps, can I draw your attention to some of the questions I think we're having coming through? John, are you seeing any of these?
I've got.
Do you want to just
I don't know
what I was saying, because I just want to just circle around and finish my point there.
Go for it.
Go for it.
I want to ask a question about what I do. So this thing of personal responsibility, agency is probably a better term, James. Thank you. But just one thing on that is, it's not just about food behaviors. What is motivation? Where does motivation come from? That itself is probably deterministic. And by deterministic, I mean, when it comes to the free will debate, I'm pretty much what's called a determinist. I don't believe humans have free will. Okay, that's a rabbit hole we probably shouldn't go down.
Sam Harris, is that the Sam Harris book?
Sam Harris, Dan Crusoe and all that lot. The right names. I'd probably take that sort of perspective. And for that, the very fact that we're motivated, some of us are, I'm quite fortunate. I'm probably a motivated type of guy, but that's not down to me. Otherwise, where does my motivation to get my motivation come from? It's all the way down. But to make your point, John, just to wrap that bit up about the food system, what it is, I think it needs to be a multiple pronged approach. It needs to be driven from top down. It needs to be driven from bottom, i.e. us, making some sort of choices, helped by other people at the side coming up, and then the food industry coming in at the side need to do better as well. Everybody needs to do better. Nobody is to blame.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good to arrive at solutions, isn't it? And is that really how Huel came about, as you trying to figure out how to create some type of, convenience which was healthy? Because people are in a rush, aren't they? They haven't got time sometimes to cook. They're grabbing things on the go. Was that the sort of thinking behind it?
So Julian Hearn, who's the principal founder, he came from that angle. He'd already been quite successful, and he was working on another project, and he was meal prepping, and he found the one thing that was easy was protein shakes. Everything else was quite hard. So his logic was, can we put everything in? And then he found me, and we created this thing. this product, and it's gone from there. So it was built out of convenience. Then looking at the environmental angle at the same time, that sort of came later on. I mean, I'm a human nutrition background. My knowledge of environmental science is learnt on the fly. 10 years ago, I knew climate change was probably something we should be worried about, but it was someone else's problem. But then when I looked into it a lot more, being a bit of a science nerd that I am, I thought, okay, this isn't just someone else's problem. This is our problem.
Yeah.
And then it started off when you first started, did Julian, he come to you, you designed the recipes, and then how did that evolve? How do you know Julian? How did you even meet and get that going?
He was looking for a nutritionist. He found me through a search, possibly looked like I thought I knew what I was doing. Yeah. I think he contacted some others as well. He commissioned me to do a project. I did it. He liked it. We sort of touched base several times over that year. Yeah. And trying to use our mutual contacts to get this thing going. And then we launched in June 2015. And then I was still doing the recipes, but we were working with our co-manufacturers to produce and to procure the ingredients. And then we started to bring all that in-house so we can do better. And it sort of grew from there. And now we've got other team of nutritionists. We've got a brilliant new product development team, a technical team. We've got obviously all the rest of the business as well that support the products moving forward. And
at that time, James, what was you thinking? Was you thinking, just see how this goes? I don't know if it's going to work.
It sounds like a great idea. I tried a few other businesses, mostly in the fitness, nutrition, bodybuilding world. Yeah. One of them, Muscle Talk, the website around for a few years. That was okay. Some people pre-Huel knew me from the bodybuilding world when I was involved in Muscle Talk. That was okay, but there was no future. It brought me and my business partner an okay monthly salary, and that was it. And then that started to fall off as social media came in, and we were looking for something else. I'd done gym clothing as well, bodybuilding show promoting, and a few other ventures in that sort of space, and they'd all been disastrous.
Yeah. Was you always just open to opportunities, James, or are you somebody who's actually really thinking about business and, in terms of growing, or do things just attract to you? For me, I'm always trying to think about business ideas sometimes. Are you the opposite or the same type of?
Something different. I'm not an entrepreneur. I've come up with some ideas. Some ideas are sounding good, but I've also been quite good at saying no to things that just weren't in my wheelhouse. But I probably should have said no to some things that were in my wheelhouse. I'm not the business guy in Huel. We've got Julian Hearn, who's the entrepreneur. We've got James McMaster, the CEO, who steers the ship and drives the ship forward, and they do their bit. I'm the nutrition guy, science guy, knowledge of sustainability. That's what I do. Sure, I've been working, with these guys for 10 years now. I've picked up a lot. I hope I have. But I'm not always, it's the bit that sort of, what I'm trying to say, I can contribute to less in the business.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, James, I've been a Huel subscriber for, I don't know, maybe 8 years or so. And I think for me, it was the kind of the credibility piece that they actually got a registered nutrition therapist on board. Mm-hmm. And, I'm for disclosure, I am a vegan. Or you could say just plant-based. I'm not a great vegan. I haven't eaten meat for like 5 or 6 years, but certainly for me, the fact that the product was easy to absorb, it was easy to make, it was nutritionally complete. It was a huge thing for me. And, and I kind of know my stuff to an extent. I'm not to the extent of you, but there was enough there going on that I can actually go, well, this is something for me. The fact it's pea protein, it's balanced, it's got everything that I would need. And I think generally speaking, for somebody that's looking to either reach for a chocolate bar or go and have a shake of Huel, it's a no-brainer. When you think about how you're taking your nutrition in, if it's going to be really convenient and actually be balanced and much better for you, it makes perfect sense. And, you know, the simplicity of the branding, the way in which it's been packaged and everything else is just conducive to consuming it.
It's great branding, isn't it? It's a great
It
name. You've got the human fuel thing. It looks good. It's slick. It tastes really good. It's got a number of those elements, hasn't it?
But James, I've worked with great people that have come up with all that.
They've done a really good job. It is really brilliant. So in terms of your book, James, you know, when you first sat down to write that book, Well Fed, did you have an idea about exactly what you wanted to get across when you wrote it? Did you think to yourself, I've got this one clear message, or did the message did it evolve once you started writing it? Because writing a book's pretty tough, isn't it?
It is, but I strangely find it, I find it tough, but I find it something I'm capable of. Now, let me expand on that. So, answer your question. It was a bit of both. It kind of had an idea of what I wanted, but then it very much evolved. So, for instance, when I came up with this strategy, it was based on three things: eating for my health, considering sustainability, and considering ethics. As I sat down to write the book, I thought there's a fourth. We need to split off physical health and mental health, because for reasons that are sort of outlined in the book. And then I got about a quarter of the way and I thought, there's five. I thought it's not what we eat, it's how we eat and who we eat with, the community, the benefits of community, because meals are the reason we have meals. And there's a reason we sit down and enjoy meals with other people evolutionarily. So I felt that needed to address as well. So that sort of plays very much into the mental health aspect as well, although the second pillar is the key one for that. But I kind of, the problems of the food system needed highlighting. We need to talk about our drive to eat. The misinformation side of things probably did come during the book. I was always aware of misinformation. I've been aware of it since I've been doing nutrition, but the prevalence of it, I started writing about after the book had started, and that became its own chapter. And I have a lot more to say on that as well later on. In fact, people can read a bit more of my ramblings on that on my Substack, Thought for Food, where what I'm writing there now, some of those ideas might morph into another book later on, but I'm writing a lot about misinformation and food belief, etc. But then the main concept is something I bring up in chapter 9, my favorite chapter, where I talk about a concept that I've come up with. I don't know if I've come up with a word. I don't think I have, but I've certainly defined the word and tried to explain why it's useful. The word is adaptivore. So you've got carnivores, herbivores, omnivores. So you might be saying, well, what's the difference between an omnivore and adaptivore? So an adaptivore is an omnivorous animal that's adapted to be able to consume a huge range of different animal, plant, fungi, or microbial nutrition. But so we compared to other creatures can consume a wide range, but we can't consume everything. We've also adapted to be able to not eat some things. I'm pretty hungry now, but I'm not going to nip out there and go and chew on that bush, right? I've not adapted to eat grass and foliage, right? Whereas an elephant or a cow or something has, but the cost of processing that is huge. So we want more nutrient dense stuff. Now, sure, in more recently, we can consume salads and stuff, which do have a bit of nutrition in them. You know, lettuce doesn't carry much with it, but it's quite filling and stuff. But the cucumber, maybe it's got a bit more to it. But also these adaptations have taken place at the level of the gene, the species, the individual, and crucially the social group. And this is where culture comes in again. There are certain things. Let's look at the level of the gene. So about 1/3 of human adults can consume and process milk into adulthood. Now, being a white European, I was brought up to think it was everybody, every human adult, but that's a very skewed perception. A lot of Africans and East Asians can't process milk in the same way. And that adaptation, that's called lactase persistence, the enzyme lactase that breaks down milk sugar, lactase to glucose and galactose. Every mammal is able to, it has that as an infant, but we're the only creatures that can do it into adulthood. So that's an example of happening at the level of the gene, but not the species. Okay, but interestingly, since we've been able to do some look at the genetics more readily, not everybody who can metabolize milk has the presence of that gene as an adult. Okay, this is interesting. There are some people from Eastern Europeans heritage who can have a reasonably large amount of dairy products, break down the milk sugar and the other nutrients with it, because this adaptation, by the way, wasn't just for the milk sugar, it was for everything that milk carried with it. But it appears this is happening, the adaptations are also happening at the level of the microbiome as well. The microbes are working with us to our mutual benefit. So that's interesting. So the cultural things would be, let's give an example of a cultural food adaptation where we're adaptable, something called nixtamalization. So vitamin B3, niacin, only until recently it was quite prevalent in certain parts of Latin America. But you've seen maize-based breads there, like tortillas or hominy. They've been created through a process called nixtamalization, where lime water, and I mean the mineral lime, not the fruit, have been put with the grains, and that extracts the vitamin B3. But where grains were consumed and they hadn't been through nixtamalization, pellagra was the deficiency of vitamin B3 was really prevalent. So this is a cultural adaptation through wisdom that's allowed us to adapt to consume a wider range of food. It's sort of further illustrating my point. Now, I talk at that about length in chapter 9, and then I go back to it in the final chapter, chapter 11 as well. Okay, why? It's all very interesting, you might be saying, James. We're adaptable. It's brilliant. Whoopie-doo. Okay. And some of the more astute people listening in at the moment might be thinking, well, isn't that working against us at the moment? We've adapted to be able to consume all this crappy junk, high sugar, fat food, high in salt and low in fiber. Isn't it working against us? On some respects, possibly. Or is it? The very fact that we have adapted and can adapt to consume nutrition from a wide range of foods might be our solution. There's certain food technologies. Okay, I work in the complete food category with Huel. I have a bias, but let's look at the ones that I'm not involved in at all. Let's look at maybe some of the insect proteins. Now, ethics aside here, that's another question. We can farm and process the protein from that. We can metabolize that. Mm-hmm. What about some of the novel proteins, the novel fats that are produced from, say, algae? Well, these are modern farming technologies grown in bioreactors. What about the cellular agriculture space, the so-called lab-grown meat space? I find that super interesting. Okay, everyone's going mad. It's not real food. It's not real food, as they munch on their McDonald's burger from a factory-farmed cow. So it's, we've maybe the fact that we're adaptivores, we can use modern food technology in the right way to be able to produce food to feed 8 billion people sustainably and nutritionally. There's a lot more to what I've said there, of course. But at the moment, food technology has been used all wrong. We've got probably 80% of food technology is making foods that we're eating too much of, are the wrong types of food. So we need to reboot food technology and look at the right ones. And I cover that in quite detail in my book. But there's also, if people don't want to read the book, check out my Substack. There's stuff there and it's all free.
James, the future is quite exciting, isn't it? I think with technology, I think we're going to potentially, in my view, I think we're probably going to genetically engineer ourselves from childbirth. I can see us potentially, having a pill that's like that's food in one go that you don't even have to eat pretty much. I reckon there's probably, I don't know how far it will be, but if you told somebody 100 years ago you could do FaceTime now, they'll probably think you're crazy. And then with AI and things like that, how do you think that's going to, affect people in terms of you're probably going to have personalized nutritionists, aren't you? You'll have personalized blood tests, personalized nutritionists.
It's already there, isn't it? We're already there.
I'm on the fence with the personalized stuff, to be honest. I'm a data fan. I love data. The more that we can use this and feed into, we can learn more. However, the human body and the food system as a whole is so complex. I don't know how we can reduce these things that much. Sure, it's good to learn about ourselves. We can learn that certain things probably aren't aren't that favourable, but it has its limits. And we enjoy food, and we should carry on enjoying food. We should carry on enjoying traditional foods as well. I might be a futurist, but with a massive part of traditional, I think we just need to have a multi-pronged approach here. It's a fascinating era we live in, and John, am I optimistic? Am I pessimistic? I'm neither. I'm cautiously optimistic, maybe, that if humans use the right technologies in the right way and don't mess things up, it could be super exciting. And this is where, you mentioned about Make America Healthy Again, some of the things that happen in there, and I find that really concerning. If we'd have had this conversation probably 12 months ago, I'd have been a lot more upbeat than I am now.
What do you think of things like I don't know if you want to touch on, but things like a Ozempic and all of these type of things? Because I think that's just going to become more prevalent in today's world. Can you see that being a more common thing?
So I think this is interesting, right? So if people ask me, do I think Ozempic or Mounjaro, if I think they're good or bad, I can't answer that question. They're neither good nor bad, right? They're good for people who have a proper real problem with food noise in the current environment they're living in, right? Let's embrace that. They will save lives. Are they bad? Well, if people are buying them on the black market, and which is what's happening, or not, there's the black market, and then there's so-called licensed pharmacies online where most people are getting them from. Then that's also not good. People having them prescribed by their GP, it can be very useful. They're very interesting drugs in its early days. Are there side effects? Definitely. Are they saving lives? Almost definitely. Are there going to be long-term effects? Probably, that are undesirable. So it's like, I love the quote from Thomas Sowell: "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." And this is another example of that.
Definitely. No, should we take a couple of questions on that?
Let's do it.
James, let's bring this one up. We have Ben Strickland. Hi, John. James. Question: How did Huel approach brand trust in the early days when the public was skeptical about meal replacement drinks?
I wasn't just the public then. The British Dietetic Association, who run the dietitians. I'm a former dietitian. Went to do a talk there on the first few months of Huel, and the dietitian was so skeptical and challenging of me. I've been invited by the BDA to do 2 talks to them about how great Huel is and about how dietitians can embrace it more lately. A complete switch round. This is great, and that's happened in 9 years. So how did I approach the brand trust? Yeah, we got a lot of hooligans, as we now call them. We got adopted people. We had the forum, which is still discusshuel.com, where people can go on and discuss things. We listened to consumers. Okay, you can listen and you can filter out the pseudoscience. But you should listen to your customers, and that gives trust. And be transparent and be honest and be open wherever you can. It's not always possible because there are conflicting motives sometimes. But wherever you can, be transparent and if somebody asks you a question, don't ignore them. Answer it and
engage
as much as you can. And so we have a brilliant social media team, brilliant customer experience team, and that's been paramount.
Perfect. We've got a Ben Reeds. He says, it seems as though over the last 20 years or so, we're seeing people now using exercise as a way of dealing with anxiety, depression, and insecurity.
Yeah, brilliant. I love this. And there is people were getting more physical activity naturally before, so maybe they didn't need to. Now we need to look to it as a formal practice. This is probably more in your wheelhouse, you two, really. Do you want to jump in anything there?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we go back to, let's say sort of caveman times of exercise didn't exist. They were doing things to go forage. They were going hunting. They were doing functional activities, and we were never designed to do exercise in the way that we do today. So I think a lot of people that see this as the sort of the be all and the end all and a means to an end, we're kind of going against nature to go and exercise in the formal way that we do. So anything that we can do that doesn't look like exercise, but is giving us the benefits of that, increasing heart rate, getting out in nature, I think is beneficial. I believe a lot of people only seem to see the gym as the answer. And if they're not those type of people, then they sort of berate themselves. And it's very much like what you're saying, James, about the food industry and the additives that are put in there that are making us eat more of them. That we're then sort of, again, this sort of self, the agency around it, and then saying, well, if I don't go to the gym and I'm not going regularly, then I'm failing in some way. But if we can get it back to movement and get it back to enjoyment and play a little bit, I think we're in with a good chance.
And like we said, there's a flip side to that, James, isn't there? You've got it's great to get people moving and doing that stuff, but then we've got the Instagram culture of where it could be, causing some type of body dysmorphia, where people are getting so into measuring and looking at other airbrushed images and then thinking, wow, I don't look like that. Is there something wrong with me type of thing?
No, there is. Exactly. The aspirations have changed as well. Some Brad Pitt in Fight Club, right? When Fight Club came out, was it 20 years ago, the film? He was seen as like looking really good. And he does look good. But now that's seen as like average. But it's not average. It really isn't average, because a lot of people are overweight and people should be aspiring to look like that. He looks great. Okay, I wouldn't ever say I'd love to look like that, because that would be a lie, because I've got this messed up brain that wants to be big and heavily muscled. But I wish I could be someone who would aspire to be like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
To do it, yeah.
Just on that point, very quickly, James, have your priorities changed dramatically? I mean, I know, because we're very similar ages, that I'm very much like you. My sort of 20s, 30s, just wanting to be big, wanting to bulk up. Yep. For the reasons that we talked about, for this kind of the insecurities, because of the trauma from childhood, all that sort of thing. And I didn't want anybody to mess with me. Whereas now it's still, the demons are still there. I'm not going to lie, but I think my priorities now are much more around just waking up in the morning and feeling like I can move without pain. My flexibility, that I can go for a run if I want to go for a run, if I want to go for a walk, my hips don't ache, nothing, hurts anymore. But I still want to feel like I am kind of built, I'm vital. I feel if I want to go out and lift something, I can go lift it. What's your perspective?
Very similar to what you've said. Mindset has changed. Probably when about 6-7 years ago, I changed my training. So I still weight train a lot, but I started bringing in circuits, where you're throwing around mediumly heavy things, battle ropes, slam balls, kettlebell swings, stuff like that. Because it's fun, right? You put the clock on for a minute and do a circuit, and it completely annihilates you and takes it out of you. But with longevity and living well older, I want to live to be older. Right? I want to be really cantankerous and old, but I've got to be in good health while I'm doing it. So
pain-free is important.
Be that dirty old man or whatever, So thinking that's my goal in life, to be a dirty old man. Don't quote me on that.
No, we'll be there together. I'll be with you at 120, mate. So I've got another 70 years to go.
Yeah.
So Daniel said here, for a recent graduate in nutrition looking to enter NPD, what are the key skills or experience that would help me get into the industry?
Okay, that's good. Well, if you've got the nutrition background, that's a key skill there. So get some experience in business, in the food industry, moving hands-on stuff. So we have taken graduates before in our NPD department. I don't recruit that area, but I do work with the guys and girls in that area. But just another skill is just make food at home. That's a skill. Right? When in the early days when we were interviewing for NPD assistants, we would get them to make something and bring it in, just something themselves, and that was part of their interview, right? So Daniel, play around and make some stuff and keep applying for the jobs. But I'm obviously skewed towards loving nutrition. So when I see someone from graduate nutrition looking for NPD, I'm going, oh yeah, I like that. I really like it. And it's a skill, right? I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that at Huel, we haven't just got the immediate nutrition team of 6 who are registered nutritionists. We've got people across the technical team and the NPD team, and even I think in the marketing team, we've got about 18 people, I think, with a formal qualification in nutrition and food science in the business out of 350 people. That's huge. And I'm particularly proud of that. So Daniel, keep applying for the right jobs.
Perfect.
Great.
And then we've got Lee Brown. He said about, it's a long message here, I won't put it up, but he said about he had a fatty liver and then he did the carnivore diet and that worked for him. Is there specific, is that what you would recommend people if they got specific ailments? Like some people might, you know, benefit from a carnivore diet. Some, it might be completely the wrong thing. Is that?
So I'm
sort of asking.
I'm of no position. If Lee has found that he's benefited from the carnivore diet, I'm in no position to refute and say he hasn't. I don't know what was having before. I'm cautious of the carnivore diet, and a lot of that comes from a planetary point. Do I think some of the people on the very plant-heavy diets that are villainizing high meat intake, do I think that's correct? No, I don't think that either. Right? If you're choosing good food, but what concerns me most about the carnivore diet is not the amount of meat you're having. And I'm taking ethics and planet aside here. That's for those reasons I don't think it's good at all. But from an individual perspective, it's not the amount of meat, it's what you're not having instead of the meat. We're in a fiber crisis, and I know a lot of the carnivore advocates here will say that we don't need fiber and pretend to cite research for that's cherry picked. The data is as conclusive as any data can be. We need a good amount of fiber. I realize I'll probably upset people. I'll probably upset Lee saying that. I don't, you know, that's the truth. We can look at the meta-analysis.
That's the reality.
A critical appraisal
around it.
Say again?
There's good research around it. So
yeah, there is, yeah. A critical appraisal of the evidence is as conclusive as anything can be in nutrition. That a good amount of fiber is so important. Me, yeah, I'm probably never going to go vegan. I will definitely keep working on to reducing my meat consumption. In the book, I have a full-on argument with myself about whether we should or shouldn't be vegans. I argue it from an anthropological perspective, a physiological perspective, and a philosophical perspective. And everybody, carnivores, vegans, omnivores, are all going to be massively disappointed with my answer.
Sure. Perfect. And so in terms of, we'll wrap up now, James. I really appreciate you coming on. That hour's absolutely flown by.
It has, isn't it? It's great.
Yeah. Is there anything that else you'd like to add, or where can people find you? Where's the best place to go? Is it your Substack and then your book on Amazon?
Yeah, Substack is a great place to go. I don't post that often because I don't do short articles. They're part of the reason I write on Substack is for me, is to me to process my ideas and make sense of my ideas, and publishing them opens myself up to criticism. So if you like a bit more in-depth stuff, I recommend that. I do the Instagram social media reel thing. So about 4 or 5 times a week, you get my face popping up, telling you about something, but won't be telling you what you shouldn't eat. I try and talk in that nuanced world. I want to be criticized. I'm a bit weird like that. I don't like people to tell me how great I am. I want to be told where I'm wrong, but with evidence. Thank you very much. Yes. LinkedIn is the other big one, of course, where we are now. And if people want to get the book, Well Fed, it's available from all good retailers, but it's available on Amazon and WX Smith, Waterstones. And it's not a diet book. It's a book about the food system, but crucially, it has actionable takeaways that people can do to improve their diet. So if you're about learning, that's for you. If you're about wanting some quick and easy things, that's also for you. I realize I'm doing a sales pitch here, but my Substack is free. There's also a bunch of guides and articles written by me and my colleagues on Huel.com, and they're not, sure, a lot of them are about Huel, but there's a lot of them that don't even mention Huel. They're just giving certain tips for healthy living. And you can subscribe to the newsletter as well, where you get a weekly update with some new articles. So yeah, if people want to learn more, you can see me in any of those places, and reach out with any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Brilliant.
Great. No, super appreciative of that, James. And we'll look out for you on all the social medias, definitely.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys.
You take care, James.
Thanks, a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you, mate. Thank you.